Hey y'all, it's Matt, your average gamer. For this video, we've got my 10 favorite fun builds of all time, while also going over a channel update later in the video. This should be a pretty epic adventure, and hopefully we can have a good time going over these addicting builds. Before we continue though, a quick shout out to ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is the VPN I use and trust, and can help keep your browsing safer and more private. There's a discount and 3 extra months free on the yearly subscription in the description below. Be sure to check it out. First one here is the Pax-a-Punch build, which utilizes the Starfist and charge attacks. By the way, all of these builds will have fun names that will often represent stuff I like, as you may notice with the title here. For the Starfist build, it's incredibly powerful, and we've got different armor sets for every build as well. The Starfist hits extremely hard and does massive posture damage as well. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Starfist in Heavy Affinity. You can put any Ash of War you like on it. We're using Blood Flame Blade. Any seal will do. You can check out the armor set I had on there. Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Axe Talisman. Then we have the Charge tier and Faith tier for buffs. Let's get into stats for this one. And for stats here, this is a very straightforward strength build. By the way, we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to buff this, along with Blood Flame Blade, and we went for 60 Vigor to get a good amount of Vigor as well. The main focus, though, is strength. Get your strength as high as you can, and take advantage of those powerful charged attacks. With Blood Flame Blade, we're getting a decent amount of bleed build up, even with the slower charge attacks. This is a very powerful build. At number 9, we have another enjoyable one, the Godslayer of War build. This build uses the Godslayer's Greatsword and Black Flame. The Godslayer's Greatsword is one of my favorite weapons in the entire game, and I can't advocate for it enough. It's super powerful and has an awesome, cool-looking Ash of War that can do fire and percentage damage. The Godslayer of War is absolute fire. And as far as the Godslayer's Greatsword's Ash of War, which is the Queen's Black Flame, which is what I'm primarily using here and mixing in Black Flame, yes, it's slow to start and it does take a little bit to get used to, but it has fantastic hyper armor and it does an insane amount of damage. Which means it's absolutely going to make this list, no question about it. There's no question that this one makes the list for me in terms of power and how fun it is to use. I really enjoy the Godslayer's Greatsword and the Queen's Black Flame unique Ash of War. It's a fantastic setup for a Faith and Dexterity build. Let's get new equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Godslayer's Greatsword plus 10 preferably, the Godslayer's Seal plus 25. We hit 51 poise. You can check out the random armor set that we have on here. And now we're going to go over talismans. For talismans, we have the Ritual Sword Talisman, we have the Fire Scorpion Charm, we have Erdtree's Favorite plus 2 to help us with the weight and some extra HP, Shard of Alexander, we had the Fire tier and Dexterity tier as well. Let's get into stats. For stats, I have the same basic setup here that I had in my last video, which was for Faith, because it is very much a Dexterity build first and then Faith secondary, so you're going to go high Dexterity as much as you can, 50-60 at level 150, and then around 40-45 Faith or so, and you're going to get great damage at the Godslayer's Greatsword. At number 8, we have one of two very straightforward names on here, and for this we have the GUTS Earthshaker build, which is probably my favorite Ash of War, current Ash of War to use on GUTS Greatsword. Is Lion's Claw better? Absolutely. Lion's Claw is no doubt better, but for a good time, add Earthshaker to your build, doing damage on the initial Ash and a powerful follow-up swing that comes with Earthshaker. Yeah, I saw some comments on a build I did a little while back where a lot of people didn't know that it has that powerful follow-up swing, and that's a great addition to the initial power of the Ash of War as well. It's a very powerful Ash of War that also has a follow-up, and it also makes for a very fun combination with GUTS Greatsword. This is one of the most enjoyable Ashes for myself personally, and it's great on bosses, and on low poise enemies you'll be able to knock them down and crush them with ease. This is a powerful build for GUTS Greatsword and something you can run fairly late game as well. Because this focuses on fun, I've elected to do side bosses and main bosses, but early game main bosses to keep it relatively spoiler free, as we've left the late game bosses out of this particular video. GUTS is perfect with Earthshaker, so be sure to give this one a try, as this build for me is definitely one of those ones you're going to go back to. Ever since I did this build a little while ago, I've been going back to this one. This is one you're definitely going to enjoy, and it makes for a good combination with GUTS. By the way, if you're watching to this point and you're not subbed to this channel, or you frequently catch my videos and you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time to sub to this channel, because when Elden Ring DLC drops, we're going to be covering it like crazy. And for those, by the way, that are waiting till later, the update and everything is timestamped, because there will be a channel update later in the video. Yeah, just a few things to talk about later in the video that we're going to get into about the channel and everything going forward. And like you guys, I really am waiting for DLC as well. I can't wait for the announcement. I'm assuming the Game of the Year awards will be something we'll get a trailer, at least hopefully then. And then I'm expecting it early to mid 2024 release. And no, that's not the announcement that's later in this video. That's just my estimation on when I think DLC will release. I hope I'm wrong and it comes out sooner, but if it doesn't, that's my expectation sometime early to mid-2024. By the way, I also want to mention as we're finishing up Radon here before we get into equipment, comment below, I'm going to say this again at the end of the video, what the most important part of DLC is for you. Like, what do you expect from DLC and what do you want to see most from Elden Ring DLC? Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have Heavy Guts Greatsword with Earthshaker on it. Any seal will do. You can see the armor set we have on here. We hit 51 Poise, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Shard of Alexander. We have the Faith tier for buffs, the Charge tier, if you're doing charged hits, now on the stats. And for buffs, you can see here we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. We went for 60 Vigor as well in this build and setup, and we went for 70 Strength when we're two-handing Guts Greatsword. We're basically hitting 99 Strength, so much like the Starfist build, heavily invested in Strength. We've got a good amount of endurance, build a solid, well-rounded build around Guts Greatsword and Earthshaker. At number 7, we have Vordt's Magic build. This build is a convenient one as I've optimized the stats and talismans to use both Death's Poker, one of my favorite weapons, and Night Comet without having to change talismans. This is an easy one to freeze your enemies and then follow up with one of the most powerful spells in Elden Ring. Death's Poker is slow with a high damage cap, and Night Comet is fast with also a very high damage cap. I love Death's Poker. It's one of my favorite magic weapons in the game. The Ash of War scales entirely with intelligence, and while it is hard to pull off because it's on the slower side, much like the Godslayer's Greatsword, the effects and everything is awesome. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have Death's Poker +10. We had 2 Staves of Loss. The main hand one is upgraded. We had a random set of armor on, Ritual Swords Talisman, Godfrey Icon, Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, and then you'd have the Faith tier for buffs, Magic tier. And for stats, as you can see on screen here, we're at level 200 on my mage character, but I have 150 stats for you, of course, for completely comparable damage. But if you want to see what high level stats they are, and on 150 stats, we have 60 intelligence, a good amount of dex. We're focused on the Ash of War, and of course, being able to cast Night Comet for massive damage. As you're going to see on the dragons here, this one is fantastic for all types of bosses and big enemies. Use the Frost Trail on Death's Poker, Ghost Flame Ignition's RB, and then follow up with Night Comet for massive damage. This is certainly easy mode, as most of the time mages are a breeze. And as you can see, the piercing effect there, I actually didn't even notice that until I went and recorded this, that it pierced right through and hit the other dragon. But generally speaking, you want to use Death's Poker, get the Frost proc, and then follow up with Night Comet. And as you can see with the explosion there and then the trail, we didn't even need Night Comet, but he did get hit initially with the first Night Comet. Incredible spell and an awesome weapon in Death's Poker. At number 6, we have the Godskin Apprentice build, which uses Black Flame Tornado, one of my favorite Ashes of War in Elden Ring. This one has little to no hyper armor, but allows you to do a ton of percentage and fire damage. This is a really enjoyable way to fight bosses, and you can put Flame Art with this on any weapon that works with the Ash of War Black Flame Tornado as well. This will give you a powerful weapon to combo with the Ash, as it scales purely with your Fate stat. Yeah, remember, it doesn't have a lot of hyper armor. You can easily get knocked down. I mean, even if you have like over 100 poise, you can still get knocked out of it decently easily. I don't know why that is. I feel like they should add a little bit of hyper armor. That said, though, the damage cap is high. It's insanely fun to use, and you get a really good, powerful, decent AR Flame Art weapon you can use with it. Let's get to equipment for a second for this awesome build and setup for Black Flame Tornado. For equipment, we have the Knight Rider's Glaive +25 preferably with Black Flame Tornado and Flame Art Affinity. We have the Godslayer Seal. You can see the armor set on here. We hit 51 poise. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, the Fire Scorpion Charm, Erdtree's Favorite +2. We have the Shard of Alexander on here as well. And then we have the Fire tier and the Faith tier. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, and by the way, you can see here we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. We have 60 Vigor, a good amount of Mind and Endurance, and then we have 70 Faith because Black Flame Tornado scales purely with your Faith stat. Build like this, by the way, you can throw in any incantations you want, basically anything that's faith-based, because Black Flame Tornado's not really scaling with anything physical damage-wise, it's scaling from your faith stats, so go for it, add what you want to that build. At number 5, the Miracle of Lightning is another cool build. This one uses Lightning Spear and Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. You can throw in any of the other lightning incantations too. This one has the potential to beat up some big bosses while also having good range at a distance. This is one you'll certainly want to try, as lightning incantations make for great damage against most bosses, as lightning is a good damage type. It isn't highly resisted in the late game either. For this one, it's the bosses that will be needing a miracle to defeat you. Yeah, by the way, you can run dual seals if you run 2 seals for the boost, but you actually get 5% more if you have the strength for the jellyfish shield to get even more damage. The stack boost is a total of 30% when you're using 2 seals, which is lighter weight, so that's nice, but it will add up to 35% with the jellyfish shield as mentioned, and you'll get a little bit more damage, and you can also do that on base new game without having to get a second seal. Definitely one of the most fun builds that's also powerful, because you can throw in Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, especially for larger targets, and then just continue to use Lightning Spear when you're at a distance to get in that damage. It's chargeable as well. It has reasonably good damage, and to just be at a range while also dishing out damage. And then once you get up close to bigger targets, cast Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, which is essentially a nuke for Faith builds. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 Gravelstone Seals, preferably both upgraded. The Jellyfish Shield, we have a random set of armor on if you want to check that out. We hit well over 51 poise, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Godfrey Icon, Lightning Tier, Faith Tier. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, this is heavily faith-based. As you can see on screen here, we're using Golden Vow and Howl the Shabriri to boost the damage here, and we're using Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, and then we have Lightning Spear for our backup. This is a solid, well-rounded faith build. Definitely one on this list I recommend trying, though I do recommend trying all of them because these are my favorite powerful and fun builds after all, but this is definitely one that I've used a lot as lightning's really fun, and let's get on to the next build. At number 4, we have the Shinobi build, so we can't really sneak up on bosses, but I wanted to highlight a samurai build with my favorite samurai Ash of War, Sword Dance. This fight goes on for a little bit, as the Magma Worm is fairly slash resistant and decently bleed resistant as well. Even so, we're able to get great damage while utilizing an Ash that's incredibly cool looking and a blast to use, as you'll find yourself using it often in battle. We've also got a high dexterity Keen Nagakiba to go with the whole samurai setup. Bloodflame Blade will get your bleed to around 85 in total, which is quite good when using the Ash of War Swords Dance. Double Slash is another great choice if you're looking for a samurai setup, but for me, I like this Ash as the animation is cool and it's really fun to pull off. It has more movement than Double Slash though, so it can take a minute to get used to it. That being said, try this one out if you're looking to become a powerful samurai in Elden Ring while getting a little bit of bleed and running a solid dexterity build. This is another one that I have a really good time with. I like Swords Dance. Now, Double Slash will probably get you more damage, but I like the animation here that we have on our Ash of War, and I like the combination with the reach, the amount of range you get with the Nagakiba as well. Throughout this video, I'm going to be asking you to comment on different things, and I want to know what you want to see in DLC. I will ask that again at the end of the video, and I think I already mentioned that once, but I also am curious as to what your favorite Ash of War in the game is too, so be sure to comment your favorite Ash of War and why it's your favorite. And is it the power of it? Is it how it looks, like the aesthetics of it? Like, what is the part that makes you love the Ash of War that much? I'm curious as to the feedback here, and we're talking about applicable Ash of Wars, not the ones that are on somber weapons. Which one do you use most, and which one do you put on your weapons the most? What's your favorite Ash of War? Throw on your favorite weapons. And if your answer is seppuku, don't worry, nobody's here to judge after all. We've all run those bleed builds, right? Jump attack bleed builds can do a lot of damage, and they can make the game easier at times as well, but there are some Ashes of War that are certainly more fun to use with that being said. And now we're going to get into equipment for this Shinobi build. For equipment, we have the Keen Nagakiba with Swords Dance. We have any seal will do here. I had a weightless seal. We had Ronin set on. The only one I think I didn't hit 51 poise. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Shard of Alexander. Then we have the Faith tier. Thorny tier. Let's get into stats. For stats, as you can see for buffs here, we have Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength with Bloodflame Blade, and we're heavily focused on Dexterity to get a good amount of damage at the Nagakiba and Keen Affinity. So if you want a Samurai type setup, try this out. You can also try Double Slash with basically the same type of setup. Really, they're very similar between that and Sword Dance. Definitely give this one a try. And then next up here at number 3, we have Kirk's One Trick Bonk Stick build. Now, this is a one-hit build focused on the Giant Crusher. All of the footage, by the way, is New Game Plus 7 here, so it becomes a little difficult to one-hit the main bosses as they have really high HP, but one-hitting anything when you pull it off is incredibly satisfying to do. I have the build and buffing system in this video for those that are curious as to how it works. This one absolutely bonks with the Giant Crusher. For equipment, we have the Giant Crusher plus 25. We have Royal Knight's Resolve on it, a Seppuku Sword to bring our HP down. We have the Black Dumpling and Mushroom Crown. We have the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, Red Feathered Branch Sword, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Axe Talisman, Faith Tier for buffs. We have the Charge Tier, Fetid Pots, Boluses. Let's get into stats. For stats, as you can see, we're using Golden Vow and Hellish Brewery. We are going to go over the buffing system in a second. If you don't want to see that, be sure to check out the timestamps below for the next one, but this build is focused entirely on your strength stat. Yeah, keep in mind in all of my videos, I always have everything timestamped. I always have chapters for my videos, so feel free to check out what you need to check out. And for this one, though, we're going to be jumping into the buffing system here, which is a little bit complicated. First thing here that we're going to do is we're going to drink our tier, and then we're going to be using the Black Dumpling. We're going to proc that for an extra 10% damage for a minute. You can bring your HP down twice with Seppuku if you're at 60 Vigor before or after the Black Dumpling. We're going to go over that though. And once we have that madness, that gives us an extra 10% damage, and then we're going to use Seppuku twice. But do not use it the last time. The last time is to proc Lord of Blood's Exaltation before we hit whatever we want to hit. And at this point, we can fill up our FP, use Golden Vow, and switch to the Mushroom Crown. And after we have that, we can fill up our FP again if you want, because you have a little bit of time here. And then we're going to use Hellish Brewery. If you want to use a consumable, you can use Blood Boil here, but they do not stack. And we're going to use Seppuku the last time. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the Fetid Pots. We're going to cure the poison with boluses so we can proc both Kindred of Rot's Exaltation and Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and then use Royal Knight's Resolve. And then you can see me embarrassingly miss my target here. Well, the Giant Crusher is a little bit slow, but at that point you can hit whatever you got to hit, and you got to do it quick. You only got about 20 seconds or less. Next up at number 2, we have the Mr. Bubbles build. And now we're in my top 2 all-time favorite builds, and this build focuses entirely on bubbles, and basically being the Bubble Lord of Elden Ring. Bubbles are the definition of good time, as beating some tough bosses with bubbles in a Souls game is a feeling like no other. And this is going to focus on the Envoy's Longhorn, which can absolutely destroy some of the dragons in the game. We're going to be using the smaller bubble weapon as well. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Envoy's Longhorn plus 10 and the Envoy's Horn. We've been using the Erdtree seal because that's good. It fits this build. We have a random set of armor on, but we've got a lot of armor on for this one. The Envoy's Crown, Ritual Swords Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Erdtree's Favorite plus 2, Shard of Alexander, Holy Tier, Faith Tier. Let's get into stats. For stats, it's another one that's all faith-based. I really enjoy faith builds in Elden Ring. You're going to be using Golden Vow and Hellish Brewery for a lot of damage, and the Envoy's Crown will give you another 15% damage too. Both ashes scale entirely off your faith stat, by the way, and we're going to show off the small Envoy's Horn here soon too, and you can get a lot of damage out of both by going with high faith. And you're going to see the little bubbles here can do a lot of damage too. No, they're no match for the Envoy's Longhorn because that does just an immense amount of damage to larger targets. It absolutely shreds them with the posture damage too, but the small bubbles can give you a little bit more range, a little bit more concentrated damage. And it's just something fun that's goofy to use too, using these in combination together, especially since you have that scaling off your faith stat anyway, so you can mix them up. And this one's rather on the light side, so it can complement the medium-sized Envoy's Longhorn. The final one, my favorite and still favorite build in Elden Ring, the Burning Bandit build. The Burning Bandit is the best build for me because it focuses on faith-based weapons and flame art while still maintaining high faith to use any incantations you like. For this, we have 2 Bandit Curved Swords with Flaming Strike, which hit over 700 AR apiece at rune level 150. The swords on fire look stellar, and they do the damage to back up the good aesthetics. And you're going to see here, Flaming Strike, by the way, does a lot of damage in Flame Art on a Faith build and get a lot of damage out of the Bandit Curved Swords, and then the jump attacks can do a lot of damage too. This is a build where you can literally jump your way to victory while also using a fun Ash of War that sets your swords on fire, and you can put it on both swords too. Odds are, with a setup like this, you'll be cruising through bosses as many of them take good fire damage. And you're going to see on Renala they were able to do really great damage on the jump attacks. And then you have Flaming Strike, and in this next clip I'm going to show that you can mix in incantations with this build as well. But being able to set both swords on fire and do massive damage makes for a solid, powerful, and fun Faith build. So for this next clip, I'm going to show you to mix in giant fireballs, or you can mix in giant fireballs and Burno Flame with the giant seal while running your super powerful fire swords. This is my favorite by a fair bit, and I enjoy both the look and the combat of fire incantations mixed with the bandit curve swords. The fact that you can get a bee in flame art, by the way, is awesome too. If you're a fan of my channel, definitely be sure to try out this addicting build. Let's get into stats and setup and build, everything you need to know for this one. And you can set both swords on fire, by the way, by using Y and RB and Y and LB, and just basically two-handing the left one, then the right one, and using Flaming Strike. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 bandit curved swords in flame art with Flaming Strike, 2 giant seals. We had a random set of armor on. You can check that out if you're curious. And now we have the Rotten Wing Sword insignia for talismans, Fire Scorpion Charm, Claw Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Fire Tier, Thorny Tier. Let's get into stats. The last 2 you can do together, more or less, too, if you want to run this type of setup, and then you can use the Envoy's Longhorn as well, the bubble build and setup too. This is a really powerful one, also highly faith-based for a lot of damage. I would get to at least 60 faith. This is a great build to try out. And now onto the channel update, and it's a decently big one. So I posted on my community tab that unfortunately my health has frequently gotten in the way of doing things I like to do. I deal with day-to-day stomach issues that can get severe. In the past 3 months, I've been dealing with a tooth infection that will not go away. I had the initial root canal and a retreat, and that didn't work, and now I have to get something called an apioectomy on my tooth. It's towards the front, otherwise I probably would have pulled it by now. I also have a little bit of mild carpal tunnel. Luckily for me, it's not severe and I don't need surgery, but according to, I guess, the doctors I'm going to or whatever, I may have injured apparently the nerve in my right thumb from, I guess, scrolling, being on my phone a lot, playing games a lot or whatever, so I have to let that kind of not be flared up anymore, so take like breaks and whatnot, I guess, going forward. And that's something that can happen to anybody. It's just the way we are with technology nowadays. And I'm sure when I go back to the doctor, they might be able to do something for that. But yeah, just a lot in the way of letting me play games and doing the things that I like to do lately. Basically, between my right hand hurting and then having my tooth throb, essentially, and I'm hoping this gets fixed within the next week or so. Every time I go to voice record, it's made videos a little bit more difficult than usual, pushing through this. I really enjoy getting the gameplay footage and all that, but again, it's been a little bit harder lately than usual. And yeah, sometimes life just gets in the way, man. Sometimes it just has, you have so much going on, you know, between my stomach, my tooth, my hand now, that it makes it more difficult. It put me in a little bit of a rut as well. And I just want to say that I'm going to be continuing with this channel because this channel means everything to me. I love this channel. I love making Elden Ring content. And essentially, I'm going to be moving back to probably about 1, maybe 2 videos tops a week until DLC gets announced. And the videos will be more focused on having a lot in them though. So if I do 1 video a week, it'll have like a whole bunch of builds in it. I got a Halloween video and a couple other ideas that I have coming up as well. But basically I just want to step back a little bit to maybe 1 video, 2 tops per week, and then concentrate on my health a little bit. Thank you all for listening and checking out my 10 favorite builds of all time, and thank you for supporting this channel. Next goal is 20,000 subs. If you want to make that happen, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to let me know what you want to see in Elden Ring DLC the most. Thanks for watching, and as always, have an amazing day.